Hello and welcome to another podcast from Odell Technology. Today we're joined by Dr. Lara Zibners and Thang from Calla Lily Clinical Care.
My name is Lara Zibners. I am an emergency room pediatrician by background. I'm an educator at the Royal College of Surgeons in London. I am a published author. I'm a medical educator. I have a business degree from the University of North Carolina, and none of that explains why I'm talking to you today. I am the co-founder of Calla Lily, and that stems from my personal experience of multiple rounds of failed IVF and the trauma associated with not just the failed IVF, but the process.
Okay, thank you very much. And Thang, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Sure. Thanks, Stephen. I'm also co-founder of Calla Lily Clinical Care. My background is actually in finance, started off on Wall Street, worked at Goldman Sachs in investment banking and private equity. But I've always been more interested in doing something very meaningful with purpose and co-founded the company with Lara. We're in the women's health space. But as you can already tell from our backgrounds, very, very different. Lara's got that lived experience, is a doctor, an educator. I'm the finance guy and help hire the team and set the strategy. But together we lead the company.
Okay, that's fantastic. I think this is a game changer for many things that we take as normal. So for me, vaginal delivery has existed for decades, but what in your view has been structurally wrong with it all? I suppose, Lara, would you like to
Yeah, I
comment?
mean, I'll start. I think people really do not understand how many medications are already given vaginally, more than given nasally, but it's not something that women talk about. And because of societal taboos, the ways in which they're given, women just put up with it. So gels, creams, pessaries, very leaky, very messy, dosage uncertainty. Not every therapeutic is suitable for something like an intrauterine device or a ring, depending on the dosage and the indication. And actually, going beyond reproductive medicine, there has been a good body of literature looking at vaginal drug delivery of systemic drugs. I've found case reports of pain medication, sedation. There's been work done on immunization. The vagina is part of the mucosal immune system in the same way that you give flu mist into your nose because that's a first line of defense against the flu. You can give HIV vaccines potentially vaginally because that would be your first point of entry. So I think there's a real lack of understanding and a lack of imagination about the number of therapeutics that could be delivered vaginally. And the ways that they've been given, people don't talk about how messy it is. So there's an opportunity here for us to change that. You know, I say if nasal drugs leaked the way vaginal drugs did, men would have solved that problem because could you imagine walking around for 2 hours with stuff dripping down your face?
So, Thang, would you like to make a comment on what's been structurally wrong with the past?
Not too much more to add to that, other
Hmm.
than the fact that there's this reality for anything that wants to be successful, that it isn't just about, let's say, the science, right? Whether it works, it's all proven. There's a lot of less side effects. Laura could really go into the trauma of intramuscular injections and used as well in fertility. And there needs to be a better way. But that's just not enough, right? There's
Hmm.
issues of reimbursement and funding it and persuading healthcare systems and doctors. And so there's a whole art to the side of getting any medical innovation adopted. And so both of us are working on that side. And so if you were asking earlier about structural, there's so much
Hmm.
structurally
Okay.
damaged about it. And a lot of that comes with the financing and getting people to support you to have that patient capital. So it's important who you have on this journey and getting all the right pieces in place. And that's some of the things that people often don't think about. It's not just the science, it's that whole art side behind it.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, in an IVF clinic today, what compromises are quietly tolerated because there has been no viable alternative? I might phrase that to you, Lara.
So interestingly, outside the US, vaginal progesterone is what's used for infertility treatments, recurrent miscarriage, etc. Inside the US, there's a tendency to combine vaginal progesterone with injected intramuscular progesterone, which was something that I experienced when my doctor said, "Oh, you're American and you're a doctor. We'll do it American style. There will be different needles in the bag." And what people and it's always surprising to women that I talk to who are American who have gone through IVF when I say outside the US, progesterone and oil, which is an oil and it's shot into a muscle, a big muscle, and it flows slowly and it is associated with lumps and bruises and infection and pain and misery. When I say people outside the US don't do that. So women outside the US, are given vaginal progesterone and they're told to lie down for a half hour to an hour with every dose. And because infertile women are extraordinarily driven individuals, they will lie down for twice that time. And so we're talking about women being asked to interrupt their life if they're not given painful injections, just with the vaginal progesterone, interrupt your life and lie around for 2 hours a day because we all have the time to do that. And I'm sure you've got nothing else to do with yourself. So go eat some bonbons and lie in bed.
That was an excellent answer. Thank you very much for that. Oh, dear. Thang, would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, I'll just add, again, this is a lot of limited stuff I'm good for, but we've proven this stuff too with a health economics analysis. So how we're able to get that support is getting a lot of grants. So the Department of Health and Social Care is fully funding our current trial. And part of that, you need to justify how can taxpayer money be spent on something like this? And a London School of Economics analysis has showed that almost £250 million is lost every year just in the UK from leaky progesterone.
Hmm.
And that includes costs to the NHS. And there's very many OBGYNs that will tell us that 100% of their patients will call and complain to the nurse or doctor about leakage. So again, £250 million lost in productivity and cost in NHS. It's kind of helpful if you have something that can solve that. And so that's just a small, obviously in the UK is a small portion of the world, and that's what we're trying to change with something that is so much more effective, convenient for women.
Okay, so if we say with you, sir, if we strip away the marketing language, what does Callavid fundamentally alter?
Callavid, if you're asking me, Callavid is just a transformational, far more convenient method of getting the drugs that you need.
Okay, okay. So is it best understood as a device innovation, a drug delivery reformulation, or a pharmaceutical platform layer?
Great. I'll chime in real quickly with this one. Lara, you can, of course, add far more color to this, but I will tell you that's part of our challenge because we're what's called a combination product. And what does that
Hmm.
mean? We're not quite a pharma, right? We're not inventing new drugs, but we're not
Hmm.
quite a device because we're nothing without the therapeutic. So a combination product, the best example is an inhaler, right? An inhaler
Hmm.
does nothing without the drug, and the drug can't get to the body without an inhaler. And guess what? Being in women's health and being a combination product, we don't fit in any simple category, right? And so you'll get a lot of investors who are med tech devices investors, or you'll get pharma investors, right? And we're kind of in between. So
Hmm.
we get a
Hmm.
lot of no's, and we're talking about not dozens or hundreds, thousands of no's. And that's part of the reason no one's kind of developed something like that. So to answer your
Yeah.
question, Stephen, we're a little bit of everything: combination product, a platform. It's kind of an in
Well,
between, but therein lies
absolutely.
opportunity.
I think
And
that's
I'll chime
brilliantly
in and
answered, Lara.
just
Yeah.
Well, I'll just for those who are listening who don't understand, we're a period care product originally is the underlying technology, which was called the tamp liner. It was a hybrid tampon mini panty liner to for period care. And what we do is we actually alter that tampon-like scaffold with every different therapeutic. So it's not like we're a syringe or an applicator that you put your drug into. We actually do the R&D to absorb just the inactive ingredients. And that means that we are a drug-led device. But as Tang said, we're not pharma. So people hear that and think, oh, phase one, two, three. I'm like, no, that's the pharma's company's problem. We're just integrating it and we're wrapping how we do that in IP to protect and even extend the life cycle of products for pharma. But exactly what Tang said, we hear no, not once or twice or 10 times a day. It's like an onslaught of
Yeah.
being punched in the nose when you're innovating in a space like this.
Yes, I think that's quite a common story. So I think, how early on did you realize that you could extend beyond fertility?
I I think our first application, we always knew that there was a it was a drug platform. Our first application was born out of the 2021 NICE guidance. At the previous iteration of the company, I was an advisor and investor. And Tang and
Yes.
I were chatting in 2021, and he said, NICE guidance has come out that every woman at risk of miscarriage should get up to 80 days of vaginal progesterone, and we've
Mm.
got the drug delivery patents. And that was the point where I said, Tang, we've never discussed my 7 rounds of IVF. And this is something I understand, and I would be interested in that if that happened. And we parked that conversation. And then when we had the opportunity in 2022 to pivot into healthcare and do this together, where we saw, I'm a doctor and I have this lived patient experience, and people feel better knowing there's a money guy in the room. So Tang's, a good partner to have. Um, it was a natural progression to say, let's start with progesterone as our first use case, but we always knew that there would be a pipeline. Progesterone's safe, it's widely used. There's national guidance in the UK. It's used globally for a range of infertility and preterm birth prevention and menopause. So it seemed like a place to start, but we always knew it was just the proof of concept.
Absolutely. Tang, do you
Yeah,
have anything
absolutely.
to?
Yeah, I'd say absolutely. From day one, we knew that there are a lot of drugs you can deliver.
Okay.
Even right now, cancer, infectious disease, the
Hmm.
vaginal microbiome, which means delivering good bacteria. We knew that there were so many things, but knowing how hard it is in the medical device space, or as a startup, or in the women's health space, those conversations, right, Lara? It's like, okay, what's the lowest hanging fruit? And again, with that NICE guideline and Lara's own experience, we're like, you know what? Let's prove that we can deliver something that is pretty straightforward and very safe, and that's progesterone. So yeah, we're starting, and we're perfectly happy with people saying we're fertility focused. We are. We're absolutely focused on delivering progesterone to improve outcomes for IVF and for miscarriage prevention. But it is so much bigger than that. Honestly, the
Okay.
fertility opportunity is probably only 5% of what's
Okay.
in front of us. So,
Okay, so you mentioned a nice equation, a nice number there, 5%. So
mhm.
in IVF, the real metric is cost per live birth, I would imagine. Where does your platform move that equation?
That infertility market is a real tricky one, right? Because in different environments, it's a boutique luxury
Hmm.
money making.
It is a
Um,
money making.
it's a very complicated topic, and I think we could speak for hours about the ethics of private equity backed fertility
Hmm.
clinics versus in some trusts in the NHS, you get some cycles paid for. There's medical tourism around the world. I mean, the challenge of being an infertile anyone facing infertility, it's an emotionally fraught situation, and there's a predatory nature to it.
Hmm.
For us, we want to take away some of that mental anxiety, some of the stress, some of the discomfort, I mean, the pain of intramuscular progesterone it was the most traumatic part of IVF. For women who are lying down so stressed out, our principal investigator, Prof. Siobhan Quenby, she has said that she's got patients, they have other children sometimes, right? So they have to get up at 5 a.m. to put their pessary in, to lie down for an hour and a half before they have to take the other kids to school. Having gone through this experience, the way it becomes your whole world, and it's something you think about all the time, just removing an element of that, I don't know that we can put a price tag
Mm.
necessarily on that, because
Okay.
our outcome's going to be better because women are just feeling more respected and less stressed out.
Oh, okay. So we're getting into to qualitative and quantitative areas. Okay. So I think
Yes,
that's an interesting point.
Stephen, let me picture this for you for a
Yeah.
second. I don't know if you have friends who have gone through that intramuscular
Hmm.
method of getting progesterone, but there are a lot of people who quit IVF because of that traumatic process. So yeah, I know
Okay.
your question is probably, okay, it costs on average, I don't know, 20,000 plus
Mm.
to go through cycles of IVF, right? Where do we fit? How do we move that needle? But for us, we can't quantify that other than the fact that, yes, you don't have to lie down. It's, better productivity, all this. I've mentioned some numbers to you, 250 million, right?
Mm.
But
Mm.
the actual drug itself, progesterone, of course, is inexpensive. But it matters how you deliver it, because you can't put a price on the number of women who quit IVF because of those needles. And not just the women who are desperate for the baby. Sometimes it's the partners, right? The partners, like, last last thing I would ever want to do is stab my wife intramuscularly, right? And so this is
In
why when
general,
people,
just stop there. Just
yeah,
stop
okay,
with that sentence. In general, I
yeah.
don't want to stab my wife. Okay, that's a
Yeah.
good
Yeah,
starting place.
yeah, jab. Sorry, jab
Better.
is
Thank you.
much
Thank
a
you.
much better word. But yeah, no. So there's and like yeah. So look, we could quantify when you look at the amount of progesterone that you need, and I could tell you that for IVF or miscarriage prevention, it's about 80 days twice a day. But that's the small price, and we believe people will pay a significant premium for a product that is less traumatic and gives you that confidence. I think the stat is like 30% of women within 3 months of a miscarriage is still suffering from PTSD, and you're going to
Mm.
give them a leaky medication and they're not sure
Mm.
where to
Okay.
place it, and it leaks like hell. So there's something that we're proud of, the fact that it's unquantifiable. That's what we'll say, in
Okay.
terms
So
of
this is
the.
interesting because when you speak to investors, do they understand this biopsychosocial wedge that you're describing, or do they still frame this as a comfort improvement product? How do the
So
investors see it?
this is exactly part of our pitch. When Tang introduces the market size, I always come in and say, we cannot actually tell you what the market is
Yes.
because of the women who drop out. And then there's other applications for vaginal progesterone, such as potentially a reduction in preeclampsia risk. And I always end that slide by saying, in my mind, every single woman is asked to take vaginal progesterone for the first 3 months of her pregnancy at some point in the future. And that is a so it's we try to frame that. Unfortunately, investors look at, especially institutional investors, right? They look at two things, which is 10x 3 to 5 years, 10x 3 to 5 years, and if you don't fit that box, you are it's a non-starter. So we've really had to go to investors who believe in what we're doing. That's, non we've raised everything to date without institutional investment, partly because we don't fit that perfect box, because we are essentially looking at multiple licensing deals with strategics.
Hmm.
We did just sign our first collaboration, but that doesn't fit a VC model. And so we've had to really go to the real believers. Many of our shareholders have personal experience with infertility and they understand exactly what we're trying to solve. And because they are aligned with our mission, their capital is more patient.
Okay. That makes perfect sense. Can you tell me something about the first collaboration agreement you've come to?
And they're really excited about it. Just announced a couple weeks ago, and it's with the oldest pharmaceutical company in the world, Merck. So this is Merck Healthcare from Germany, and I could tell you that they are so far fantastic partners, and but with that reputation being that old, they are deeply conservative, and it took a while to even just get to this stage. But of course, it's really exciting, right? We are, as I said, it's really hard in the women's health space doing what we're trying to do, and you need to have. And I don't even like the word collaboration. Just I prefer collective action. There's a lot of people who collaborate. What does that mean? But where are people putting money where their mouth is, and moving things forward? And like I said, it took a while, but Merck, we've signed up to that strategic collab. So that is just a couple weeks ago, and that is starting to validate our model of dozens and dozens of potential licensing deals with many other pharmaceutical companies. And so let's watch this space within the next 12 months. And when we finish our trials and have that clinical evidence, it's going to prove that it can work with progesterone. Well, why wouldn't it work with many other applications?
Okay. All right. Well, congratulations. I think that's very exciting news.
Thanks.
When you were talking about dozens and dozens of application, I mean, platform companies often struggle with focus.
Yep.
How do you prevent indications for all?
Oh, well, I'll tell you, the short answer is that there's no money to look at, to not be laser focused. I will
Got
tell
it.
you, and Laura knows this because we were WhatsApping each other a couple days ago. One of the most flattering things I've ever read, because there's a lot of noise sometimes, and we've announced this collaboration, as you know, but Andy Lewis is our principal scientist. He's got
Mhm.
55 patents. We had to grab him out of semi-retirement. One of his inventions for a UK company called Biocompatibles was sold to Boston Scientific for over $4 billion. He thinks this is going to be bigger, right? but
Yes.
he shared in our internal messaging Slack system. Once we got all the final paperwork, because we're now a clinical stage company, he has said that he has worked for years at companies with much larger departments, and
Hmm.
no one could do it as good or as fast as we've done. And that was
Excellent.
just an internal message. But so I'm answering your question in indirect ways.
Yes.
Like there
Sure.
is no resource. We have to focus and we have to deliver progesterone. So there is a lot we can do, but we'll only explore that when we have more partners who will fund that for us because we know we're not going to, it's too hard to do that. So it's
Okay.
focused on progesterone.
Well, it's exciting. I mean, if everything goes right in 5 years, what has structurally changed in clinical practice? Can you answer that?
Oh, I'm excited about that. I see that there's two prongs to that answer. One, our first focus is infertility. And I'm actually speaking to you from Houston, Texas. I'm at Texas Medical Center. Spent the day yesterday with the head of reproductive endocrinology, who's very interested in spearheading a study for us showing non-inferiority against progesterone and oil. I want to see the US standard of practice shift to be in line with the rest of the world and get away from those injections, which I think are frankly abusive. So that's one prong. I want to see better care for women with infertility and more awareness about the role of progesterone in miscarriage prevention, and people just being more aware of us saying, oh, there's a product that can be used for that, that patients like and feel respected when they use it. On the other side, I want there to be more attention to the the role of vaginal drug delivery having so many more potential applications for even systemic drugs. If you've got a migraine, why would you want to take something orally when you're already feeling nauseous? And we could deliver that vaginally and discreetly, and you just pop into the restroom. I mean, so I think I want to see that. I want to see a shift in how women are treated when it comes to fertility, not just, oh, you want to have a baby, you'll put up with anything. And I
Mm.
want to see a little more imagination about how we can tap into this richly vascularized mucosal immune system surface to absorb drugs.
Okay.
Even I'll just add to that. I find it fascinating because obviously we're biased and it's so obvious to us. But when we're talking to some of these pharma partners, they know that the stat of how much less dosage you need when you compare oral to vaginal is a 90% less dosage, right? Because you don't have to
Hmm.
go through the gastrointestinal pathway, right? Laura can explain the more technical terms there. But for
Mm.
me, it's just like it's total no-brainer. Less side effects, not having to waste it all going through a gastrointestinal pathway. There is a rich source of delivering drugs that is totally untapped
Mm.
in something that is so convenient and simple to use and gives you that confidence. So that is, yeah, what
I love that description. And I think what this is this a product story or are we witnessing early stages of delivery standard rewrites?
wow. Mhm.
I go with number two.
Okay, so it's a at the sorry, I should so it's an early stages of delivery standard rewrite. Would you agree?
I mean, I'm literally working on an article on exactly this. And, that it's not that the vaginal route of drug delivery has been known for
Yeah,
centuries.
it
It
has.
is not about a lack of science. It is about a lack of imagination, about a
Hmm.
lack of innovation, about a lack of the willingness of the to say the word vagina, right? It's just people don't, and that's one of the things that we often say internally is one of the challenges raising in this space is that investors don't, who are still largely male, don't want to say vagina at their Monday morning portfolio meeting.
Mm.
It's not
Mm.
a word that they want to use. And we can see that play out. I mean, again, we could talk for hours about the funding and the acceleration that went into Viagra versus the funding that's gone into anything for women, right? Like endometrial, the stats are shocking, but if
Mm.
it's a male dominated condition, the
Mm.
funding is always skewed more heavily um, out disproportionate to the actual burden of disease or illness than if it's a female led condition. And so I would like to think that we're going to shift. This is women's health's moment, right? And I'd like to think that we're well positioned to to change the conversation from the oral drug delivery, which is the default. Everyone just thinks, oh, patients want an oral drug, and so then they'll adhere to it better. So there's no evidence for that. We know patients like oral medications, but there's no evidence that necessarily adherence is better. Let's start thinking more imaginatively about not just it's oral or injected. Where else can we give drugs?
Absolutely.
Steve, let me add to that, just to add some extra emphasis to what Lara just said. Uh, all of our patents don't just cover vaginal drug delivery, they also cover rectal drug delivery, right? So
Mm,
you were just asking about lack of focus. Guess what? We could keep on going with plenty more.
mm,
Uh,
mm.
but not just that, if I could say, not just a product story, not just changing a guideline story. I think, wouldn't it be great if we almost overcompensate the other way? You know, the
Mm.
real vision of our company, at least when you ask me of what we can add in terms of that specialty and that knowledge, it's getting to even personalized manufacturing. So women will use Callavid. Yes, starting in fertility, but possibly menopause, possibly infectious disease, all sorts of use cases. But it's not just a one size fits all. You know, if you are white or you're black or you've got
Yep.
different needs, right? Even in certain spaces like vaginal microbiome, and for us to get personalized in Callavid what you need when you need it very quickly to you, that will transform the world and outcomes big time. Not just a simple
Sure.
device, just getting exactly what women need.
I love both of those conversations. And I think what strikes me about this conversation is that the most powerful innovations are often those that address what medicine has normalized for too long. So I think that, drug delivery may not be glamorous, but it's foundational. So I'm very grateful for the time you've both afforded to this conversation today. Is there anything you both want to add before we depart?
Have the courage to do something that's hard. 80% of healthcare innovation is digital. And when you have scientists who actually expect to be paid, like, our burn is not a living room in a pizza box. We have an amazing team. And what we're doing is so much harder. I was talking to somebody recently who said, if you're not doing AI, just fire everyone and shelter in place until this wave is over. And
Yes.
that's not what we're doing. We can't AI drugs into the vagina.
No,
Sorry.
we can't. No, it's
No.
true. Don't be
So
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
so
yeah,
it's
yeah.
about be
No,
courageous. Be courageous as an
I
innovator,
agree.
be courageous as an investor, be courageous as a supporter of what people are trying to do.
I couldn't agree more. Thang?
As per usual, Lara always steals a little bit of limited thunder I might have because the
No.
word the word I'm always looking for is more courage, right?
Okay.
Because it's easy to do the easy stuff, right? And like I told you, we're in that cross section of women's health and med devices and a combination product and something that no one really wants to chat about, right?
Yes,
And we
absolutely.
briefly talked about AI. AI, of course, is going to change the world. It's going to speed up clinical trials. It's going to speed up research and finding more drugs, more therapeutics. But I guarantee you, and we all know this, AI will never, ever physically deliver a drug. You
No,
need physical products. And yeah, they're hard. They're hard to go through the regulatory pathway. They're hard to fight and do it honorably. I should mention we're a certified B Corp. So we purposely make it hard on ourselves. You know, B Corps aren't often in the medical device space. It's a type of
no,
ethical kind of certification, but we want to do things right. We're never, ever going to cut corners. We're going to do what's right for people, planet, communities, planet, all that, of course, with the highest priority being patient safety. It's not easy doing everything, as I said, honorably, and you can only do that if you find people who are crazy as you are. That's the other C word, crazy. So maybe courageous. We're looking for courage. We're also looking for crazy people. And Laura and I know why they call investors, a lot of them angels, because they are saving the day. So that's what we're looking
absolutely.
for.
I couldn't agree. We all need angels, I think, in this investment world. All right. Well, I
Yeah.
want to thank you both very much for your valuable time, and I'm definitely going to come back to you in a few months to see how the first agreement is going. I'm sure it'll be a game changer.
Thank you,
So thank you
Stephen.
very much, Lara and Thang, and thank you for your thoughtful discussion today.